The surface of the moon was barren, a desolate wasteland of jagged rocks and fine gray dust. The airless world spun silently around its dying star, untouched by life, for millions of years. Yet, on this cold and lifeless rock, a team of explorers moved with purpose. They were searching for something, anything, that could shed light on the ancient civilization rumored to have thrived here long before humans even walked upright. Captain Lucas Drake led the group, his sharp blue eyes scanning the horizon as he adjusted the oxygen mask over his face. Behind him, 4 others followed in heavy suits designed to protect them from the harsh environment. Among them was Dr. Rachel Morgan, a geologist whose curiosity often outweighed her caution. She knelt near a cluster of strange, blackened stones, brushing away layers of ash with gloved hands. "Lucas," she called out, her voice crackling through the comm system. "You need to see this." Dr. Morgan's tone carried urgency, prompting Drake to turn back toward her. He trudged across the uneven ground, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. When he reached her side, she pointed to what looked like an unnatural depression in the terrain, a perfect circle partially buried beneath centuries of volcanic debris. "It's not natural," she said firmly. "Look at the edges. This was made by intelligent beings." Dr. Morgan wasn't wrong. As the team began clearing away the loose material, they uncovered something extraordinary. A smooth metallic surface that gleamed faintly despite being coated in grime. It didn't take long for them to realize they had found more than just ruins. They had stumbled upon an artifact. A massive suit of armor lay embedded in the ground, its design sleek and otherworldly. Every inch of it seemed crafted with precision, its surface etched with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly under their helmet lights. "What is this thing?" muttered one of the engineers, a tall man named Kevin Foster. His voice held both awe and unease. No one answered. The silence stretched as everyone stared at the mysterious object. Captain Drake stepped closer, reaching out tentatively to touch the armor. But when his gloved hand hovered near its surface, a low hum filled the air. The sound startled the group, causing a few to stumble backward. "Did you hear that?" whispered another crew member, a woman named Lisa Harper. Her wide eyes darted between the armor and her teammates. Drake nodded slowly but didn't withdraw his hand. Instead, he pressed it against the metal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the hum grew louder, resonating deep within their chests. Faint pulses of light rippled across the armor's surface, illuminating the darkened landscape around them. But just as quickly as it started, the phenomenon stopped. The armor fell silent again, leaving the explorers staring at it in stunned disbelief. "We should leave it," Lisa suggested nervously. "It's dangerous." Dr. Morgan shook her head. "Dangerous or not, we can't just walk away. This could be the most important discovery in human history." After some debate, the team decided to document the site thoroughly before attempting to move the artifact. They took photographs, recorded measurements, and scanned every detail they could. Despite their efforts, the armor remained stubbornly inert, refusing to respond to any further attempts at interaction. As they packed up their equipment and prepared to return to their ship, Captain Drake glanced back at the armor one last time. Something about it unsettled him. It felt alive, as if it were watching them, waiting. Whatever it was, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity had only scratched the surface of its secrets, and those secrets might change everything. Back on Earth, the mysterious armor was carefully transported to a high-security research facility buried deep beneath the Nevada desert. The journey had been tense. Every bump and jolt of the transport vehicle made the scientists uneasy, as if the artifact might suddenly come alive again. But it remained still and silent, its surface cold and unresponsive, much like when it had first been discovered. Dr. Hannah Lewis stood in front of the reinforced glass chamber where the armor now rested. She adjusted her glasses, her sharp brown eyes scanning every inch of the object. As one of the lead researchers assigned to study it, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just some ancient relic. It was something far more complex, something alive. "Well?" asked Dr. Peter Walsh, a colleague who leaned against the wall nearby, arms crossed. "Any theories?" Hannah sighed, shaking her head. "Not yet. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. Look at those patterns. They're not random. They almost look mathematical." Peter raised an eyebrow. "Mathematical? You think it's some kind of code?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But there's intelligence behind this design. Intelligence we can't even begin to understand." The two fell silent as they watched the armor through the glass. It sat motionless, its gleaming surface reflecting the dim laboratory lights. Despite its beauty, it gave off an unsettling vibe, as though it were biding its time. That night, after most of the team had gone home, Hannah stayed late in the lab. She couldn't stop thinking about the hum they'd heard on the alien moon, the way the armor had reacted briefly when Captain Drake touched it. What had triggered it? Was it truly dormant, or was it waiting for something specific? Curiosity got the better of her. Moving cautiously, she approached the chamber and placed her hand against the cool glass. Nothing happened. Emboldened, she opened the chamber door and stepped inside, standing mere inches from the artifact. Her heart raced, but she pushed aside her fear. This was science, after all, or so she told herself. As she reached out to touch the armor, her gloved fingertip brushed its surface. For a split second, nothing occurred. Then, without warning, the room filled with a low, resonant hum. Hannah gasped, stumbling backward as the armor began to glow faintly. Tiny pulses of light rippled across its metallic skin, moving in intricate patterns that seemed to defy logic. The hum grew louder, vibrating through her chest, and then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. Hannah froze, her breath catching in her throat. The armor was no longer glowing, but it felt different, more present, somehow, as if it were aware of her presence now. "Dr. Lewis," a voice startled her, and she turned to see Kevin Foster, one of the engineers, rushing into the lab. "What are you doing in there? Are you okay?" She nodded quickly, stepping out of the chamber. "I'm fine. I wanted to test something." Kevin frowned, glancing nervously at the armor. "You shouldn't be messing around with that thing alone. We don't know what it's capable of." Hannah knew he was right, but she couldn't deny the thrill she felt. Whatever she had done, she had awakened something. The question was, what exactly? Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly to analyze the data from that night. Sensors recorded minute changes in temperature and energy levels during the brief activation, but none of it provided clear answers. The armor remained stubbornly inert, refusing to react to any further tests. Still, Hannah couldn't shake the feeling that it was testing them, watching, waiting, deciding whether they were worthy of whatever secrets it held. One evening, as Hannah reviewed the latest scans, Peter walked up beside her. "You know," he said quietly, "there's a theory floating around among some of the others." "What kind of theory?" she asked, not looking up from her screen. "That maybe it's not meant for us," Peter replied. "Maybe it's designed for someone, or something, else." Hannah paused, considering his words. Could that be true? Had they found something that humanity wasn't supposed to touch? The thought sent a chill down her spine, but it also ignited a spark of determination within her. If the armor was meant for someone else, then why had it responded to her touch? There had to be a reason, and she intended to find out. The research team decided it was time to take a bold step. If the armor had reacted to human touch, perhaps it would respond to other life forms too. Earth wasn't alone in the universe anymore, not since humanity had made contact with alien civilizations decades ago. The galaxy was teeming with intelligent species, each with their own unique biology and abilities. Maybe one of them could unlock the armor's secrets. Dr. Hannah Lewis stood in the observation room overlooking the testing chamber. Below her, a group of volunteers from various alien races waited patiently, or impatiently, depending on their temperament. Some fidgeted nervously, while others exuded confidence, eager to prove themselves worthy. The air buzzed with anticipation as the first volunteer stepped forward. "This is it," said Dr. Peter Walsh, standing beside Hannah. His voice carried both excitement and unease. "We'll finally know if this thing is universal or picky." Hannah nodded but said nothing. She couldn't shake the memory of how the armor had hummed beneath her fingertips. It had felt personal, almost intimate. Would it react the same way to someone else, or would it reject them completely? The first volunteer was a tall, insectoid creature named Zixar, hailing from a distant star system. Its segmented body shimmered with iridescent colors, and its multifaceted eyes reflected the bright lights of the chamber. Zixar approached the armor cautiously, extending one of its delicate limbs toward the artifact. "Touch it," instructed Kevin Foster, who monitored the experiment from a control panel nearby. Zixar hesitated for a moment before lightly tapping the armor surface. At first, nothing happened. Then the armor let out a low growl, a deep, guttural sound that sent shivers down everyone's spines. Before anyone could react, a pulse of energy erupted from the armor, throwing Zixar backward. The creature landed hard on the floor, its legs splayed awkwardly as sparks danced across its exoskeleton. "What just happened?" shouted Kevin, frantically checking the readings on his screen. "I don't know," Hannah replied, her heart racing. "It rejected him." Medics rushed into the chamber to tend to Zixar, who appeared dazed but otherwise unharmed. The rest of the volunteers exchanged nervous glances, some visibly reconsidering their decision to participate. Undeterred, the team pressed on. One by one, representatives from different species stepped up to test the armor. A reptilian warrior named Varnock tried next, his scaly hand reaching confidently toward the artifact. But instead of activating, the armor emitted a high-pitched whine that caused Varnock to collapse to his knees, clutching his head in agony. Another volunteer, a jellyfish-like being that floated rather than walked, barely touched the armor before fainting dead away, its translucent body glowing faintly as if overloaded with energy. Each attempt ended in failure. Some were thrown back violently, others experienced intense pain, and a few simply collapsed without explanation. The armor seemed to have no interest in any of them. Frustration mounted among the researchers as they struggled to make sense of the results. "It's rejecting every single one of them," Peter muttered, rubbing his temples. "Why?" Hannah stared at the armor through the glass, her mind racing. "Maybe it's not about biology," she said softly. "Maybe it's something deeper, something we can't measure." As the final volunteer, a towering, four-armed humanoid, was escorted out of the chamber after yet another failed attempt, Hannah felt a growing certainty. The armor hadn't responded to any of these beings because it wasn't meant for them. But why had it reacted to her? She glanced at Peter, then at Kevin, who looked equally baffled. None of them had answers, but one thing was clear. The armor had chosen not to bond with any alien life form. For reasons unknown, it denied them all. And yet it had awakened under her touch. Hannah turned back to the armor, her thoughts swirling. Was it possible that the artifact recognized something uniquely human? Or was there another explanation, one they hadn't even considered yet? Whatever the truth, she knew they were closer to understanding the mystery than ever before, and she couldn't wait to find out more. The testing chamber was eerily quiet after the long day of failures. The alien volunteers had been sent away, some nursing injuries, others still shaken by their encounters with the mysterious armor. The researchers gathered in the observation room, their faces etched with exhaustion and frustration. None of them could explain why the armor rejected every single non-human who touched it. It was as if the artifact had a mind of its own, deliberately denying anyone who wasn't human. Dr. Hannah Lewis sat at the edge of the table, her hands clasped tightly together. She stared at the armor through the glass, her thoughts racing. "What if we're missing something?" she asked aloud. "What if it's not just about biology or intelligence? What if it's looking for, I don't know, something deeper?" Peter Walsh sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Deeper? Like what? A soul? You think this thing can sense that? Hannah didn't answer right away. She wasn't sure herself. But there was one thing they hadn't tried yet, letting a human interact with the armor again. After all, it had responded to her touch before. Maybe it would do so again, especially under different circumstances. We need another test, she said finally. A controlled one, with a human subject. Kevin Foster, who had been quietly reviewing data on his tablet, looked up sharply. Are you serious? We barely understand what this thing is capable of. What if it hurts whoever tries? It already hurt Zixer and Varnock, Hannah countered. But it didn't hurt me. Not really. There's something here we're not seeing. Something important. The room fell silent as the others considered her words. Finally, Peter nodded slowly. Okay, let's try it. But we'll take every precaution. No risks. They decided to use Alex Carter, a young technician who had been assisting the team since the armor arrived. Alex was unassuming, with messy brown hair and a tendency to crack jokes when things got tense. He wasn't a scientist or a soldier. He was just a regular guy doing his job. When Hannah approached him about volunteering, he hesitated. Me? He asked, pointing to himself. Why me? I'm not exactly hero material. That's the point, Hannah replied. You're ordinary. If the armor responds to you, it proves it's not about skill or training. It's about being human. After some convincing and a lot of reassurance from the medical team, Alex agreed. The next morning, he stood nervously in the testing chamber, staring at the armor like it might leap to life at any moment. Hannah watched from the observation room, her heart pounding. This was it, the moment they'd been waiting for. Just touch it, Kevin instructed over the intercom. Lightly, okay. Don't press too hard. Alex swallowed hard and nodded. He took a step forward, his hand trembling slightly as he reached out toward the artifact. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the armor began to hum softly, the same sound Hannah had heard during her encounter. Tiny pulses of light rippled across its surface, growing brighter with each passing second. And then, it moved. The armor shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if stretching after a long sleep. Before anyone could react, a burst of radiant energy enveloped Alex, surrounding him in a glowing cocoon. The light was so bright that the researchers shielded their eyes, squinting through the glass. When the glow finally faded, Alex stood transformed. He was no longer wearing his standard-issue jumpsuit. Instead, he was clad in the gleaming suit of armor, which fit him perfectly as though it had been made for him. Every detail of the artifact seemed alive now, shimmering faintly as if infused with power. Alex looked down at his hands, flexing his fingers inside the metallic gauntlets. His face was a mix of awe and disbelief. What just happened? He stammered, his voice trembling. Hannah stepped into the chamber, her eyes wide with wonder. It chose you, she whispered. The armor chose you. The room erupted into murmurs as the rest of the team filed in, crowding around Alex. They bombarded him with questions, but Alex could only shake his head, overwhelmed by the experience. The armor felt strange against his skin, not heavy or restrictive, but alive, almost like an extension of his own body. As the initial shock wore off, Hannah turned to Peter. This changes everything, she said quietly. If the armor bonds with humans, it means it was made for us. Or maybe it sees something in us that others don't. Peter frowned, glancing at Alex. Or maybe it's using him. We don't know what this thing wants yet. For now, though, none of that mattered. The armor had chosen a human, a simple technician named Alex Carter, and nothing would ever be the same again. Alex Carter stood in the middle of the testing chamber, still trying to process what had just happened. The armor felt strange on his body, warm, almost alive, as if it were a second skin rather than cold metal. He clenched and unclenched his fists, watching the gauntlets respond with fluid precision. Every movement he made was amplified, smoother and stronger than usual. It was exhilarating and terrifying. Try walking, Dr. Hannah Lewis suggested from the observation room. Her voice carried through the intercom, calm but tinged with excitement. Alex hesitated for a moment before taking a cautious step forward. To his surprise, the armor moved with him effortlessly, adjusting to his stride, as if it already knew how he walked. Emboldened, he took another step, then another, until he was pacing across the chamber like he'd worn the suit his entire life. "This is insane," Alex muttered under his breath. "It's like, I don't even feel it." "That's because it's adapting to you," Hannah replied. She exchanged a glance with Peter Walsh, who was furiously jotting down notes. "The armor isn't just a tool, it's learning. It's becoming part of you." Encouraged by her words, Alex decided to test its limits. He crouched slightly, then pushed off the ground with all his strength. Instead of stumbling or falling, he shot upward like a rocket, hovering several feet above the floor before gently descending back down. His heart raced as he landed softly, the armor absorbing the impact without effort. "Did you see that?" Kevin Foster exclaimed, leaning closer to the glass. It gave him enhanced mobility. But the surprises didn't stop there. As Alex continued experimenting, he discovered other abilities. When he focused on an object, a metal chair sitting in the corner of the room, it began to vibrate violently before flying across the chamber and landing in his outstretched hand. Telekinesis, or some kind of energy manipulation. "It's incredible," Hannah whispered, her eyes wide with awe. "This thing is rewriting the rules of physics." Yet, despite the wonder of it all, something felt off. Alex noticed it first during one of his tests. He tried to pick up a heavy crate, expecting the armor to amplify his strength further. But instead of obeying his command, the armor froze. A sharp pulse ran through his body, forcing him to drop the crate. Pain shot through his arms, leaving him gasping for breath. "What was that?" Peter asked sharply, noticing Alex's reaction. I don't know," Alex stammered, clutching his chest. It felt like it fought back. The team fell silent, exchanging uneasy glances. For the first time since the armor bonded with Alex, doubt crept into their minds. Was this truly a gift, or something more dangerous? Over the next few hours, they conducted more controlled experiments, carefully documenting every interaction between Alex and the armor. They quickly realized that while the artifact granted immense power, it also imposed restrictions. Certain actions triggered resistance, as if the armor had its own will. During one particularly alarming incident, Alex attempted to strike a training dummy with excessive force. The armor locked his joints mid-motion, refusing to comply until he relaxed his stance. "It's not just boosting your abilities," Hannah observed thoughtfully. "It's guiding them, controlling them." "But why?" Peter asked. "What does it want?" No one had an answer. Yet, as Alex grew more accustomed to the armor, he began to sense faint whispers in the back of his mind. Subtle impressions, like fragmented memories or distant voices. At first, he dismissed them as stress or exhaustion, but the sensations grew stronger, clearer. He started to understand that the armor wasn't merely reacting to him, it was communicating with him. One night, after the others had gone home, Alex sat alone in the chamber, staring at his armored hands. The whispers returned, louder this time. They weren't words exactly, but emotions, feelings of purpose, duty, and warning. He closed his eyes, focusing on the sensation. Slowly, images began to form in his mind. Vast battlefields, towering enemies, and cities reduced to ash. When Alex opened his eyes, his expression was grim. Whatever the armor wanted, it wasn't just about power. It had chosen him for a reason, one that might demand far more than he was prepared to give. The whispers in Alex's mind grew louder with each passing day. At first, they were faint, like echoes in a distant hallway. But soon they became impossible to ignore. He could feel the armor pulling at him, urging him towards something he couldn't yet understand. It wasn't just guiding his actions anymore. It was trying to show him its past. One evening, After another long session of testing, Alex sat alone in the chamber. The researchers had left hours ago, their voices replaced by the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. He stared at the metallic surface of the armor covering his hands, running his fingers over the intricate patterns etched into the material. They seemed to pulse faintly under his touch, as if responding to his curiosity. "What do you want from me?" Alex whispered aloud, half expecting no answer. But this time, there was one. A flood of images rushed into his mind so vividly that it felt like he was living them. He saw towering beings with glowing eyes and sleek, angular bodies. They looked almost human, but not quite. These creatures moved with grace and precision, wielding weapons far beyond anything Earth had ever created. They were the creators of the armor, a civilization that called themselves the Varith. Through fragmented visions, Alex learned how the Varith had forged the armor as both a protector and a weapon. In its early days, it had served them well, defending their worlds from cosmic threats and ensuring peace across their empire. But over time, the Varith grew arrogant. They began using the armor not for protection, but for domination, conquering weaker species and expanding their territory without mercy. The armor resisted. Alex felt waves of anger and sorrow emanating from it as the visions continued. The artifact rebelled against its creators, refusing to be used as a tool for destruction. In the final battle, it turned on the Varith, unleashing its full power to annihilate them. Entire planets burned in the aftermath, leaving nothing behind but ruins and silence. When the vision faded, Alex slumped forward, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His heart pounded in his chest, and sweat dripped down his face, despite the cool air of the chamber. He realized now why the armor had rejected every alien who tried to bond with it. It didn't trust anyone who might use it for conquest again. And yet it had chosen him. "Why me?" Alex murmured, clutching his head. "What makes me different?" The armor didn't answer directly, but he sensed a flicker of hope within its energy. Maybe it saw something in him, a chance to start over, to serve a greater purpose, or maybe it simply needed someone to carry its burden. The next morning, Alex shared what he'd experienced with Dr. Hannah Lewis and the rest of the team. They listened intently, their expressions shifting between awe and concern. When he finished, Hannah leaned back in her chair, her brow furrowed in thought. "So it's not just a weapon," she said slowly. "It's sentient, and it has morals." "It seems that way," Alex replied. "It won't let me act recklessly or violently unless it thinks it's necessary, like it's trying to prevent history from repeating itself." Peter Walsh rubbed his chin, looking troubled. "That's impressive and terrifying. If it can override your decisions, then who's really in control here? You or the armor?" Alex hesitated. He didn't have an answer. Part of him trusted the armor, sensing its desire to protect rather than harm. But another part feared losing himself completely, becoming nothing more than a vessel for its will. Over the following days, the researchers worked tirelessly to better understand the bond between Alex and the armor. They tested its limits carefully, documenting every interaction. The armor revealed new abilities, short bursts of flight, enhanced reflexes, and even temporary invisibility. Each discovery brought excitement, but also unease. With great power came great responsibility, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the armor expected something from him. Something monumental. Late one night, as Alex stood alone in the chamber once more, he felt the whispers return. This time, they weren't warnings or memories. They were instructions. The armor showed him coordinates deep in space, a location unknown to humanity. Whatever awaited him there, he knew one thing for certain. His journey was only beginning. The coordinates burned in Alex's mind like a beacon, impossible to ignore. They were etched into his thoughts by the armor itself, glowing faintly in his vision whenever he closed his eyes. The researchers noticed the change in him immediately. He was quieter, more distant, as if his focus had shifted entirely to whatever the armor wanted him to do. "Where are these coordinates?" Dr. Hannah Lewis asked one morning, her voice sharp with concern. She had been watching Alex closely since he first mentioned them, sensing that something bigger was at play. "I don't know exactly," Alex admitted, staring at the holographic star map projected onto the wall. "But it's far from Earth, out near the edge of known space." Peter Walsh frowned, leaning over the map. "That's dangerous territory. There are factions out there. Pirates, rogue colonies, even hostile aliens. If you go, you won't just be representing yourself. You'll represent humanity." Alex nodded slowly, feeling the weight of Peter's words. He hadn't told anyone yet, but he already knew what he had to do. The armor wasn't giving him a choice. Every time he hesitated, the whispers grew louder, pressing against his mind until he could think of little else. It wasn't anger or force. It was urgency, like the armor was trying to warn him about something. "We need to prepare," Hannah said finally, breaking the tense silence. "If this thing is sending you somewhere specific, we can't send you unprepared. We'll gather supplies, retrofit a ship, and figure out how much control the armor gives you in combat scenarios." Kevin Foster, who had been quietly observing the conversation, spoke up. "And what happens if it overrides him mid-mission? What if it takes complete control?" Hannah glanced at Alex, her expression unreadable. "We don't have answers for everything. But sitting here isn't going to help us understand it better. If the armor wants him to go, then maybe we need to trust it, for now." Preparations began immediately. A small spacecraft was chosen for the mission, equipped with advanced sensors and defensive systems. The team worked around the clock, knowing they didn't have much time. Alex spent hours training, learning how to use the armor's abilities more effectively. He practiced flying, fighting, and controlling its energy pulses, all while trying to maintain some semblance of autonomy. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that the armor was always one step ahead of him. As the launch date approached, tensions rose. News of the artifact, and Alex's bond with it, had leaked beyond the research facility. Governments and corporations demanded access, claiming the armor belonged to humanity as a whole. Meanwhile, rumors spread across the galaxy, reaching the ears of hostile alien factions. One group, led by a ruthless warlord named HFY War, issued an ultimatum: hand over the armor or face the consequences. "They're coming for us," Kevin warned during a late-night meeting. HFY War doesn't negotiate. If he thinks the armor is a threat or a prize, he'll stop at nothing to get it. "We can't let that happen," Hannah replied firmly. "If the armor falls into the wrong hands..." She didn't finish her sentence. Everyone in the room understood the stakes. The armor wasn't just powerful, it was intelligent. And if someone like HFY War managed to wield it, the results would be catastrophic. On the eve of departure, Alex stood alone in the chamber once more, staring at his armored reflection. The whispers were louder now, almost deafening. He could feel the armor preparing him, strengthening him for what lay ahead. Whatever waited at those coordinates, it wasn't going to be easy. "You ready for this?" Hannah asked softly, stepping into the room. Her tone was gentle but filled with worry. Alex turned to look at her, his expression resolute. "I don't think I have a choice. The armor chose me for a reason. I just hope I'm strong enough to live up to it." Hannah nodded, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Whatever happens, you're not alone. We'll do everything we can to support you." As dawn broke, Alex climbed aboard the spacecraft, the armor gleaming under the harsh hangar lights. The engines roared to life, and within moments he was hurtling toward the stars. The mission ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and mystery. But one thing was clear: the armor had awakened, and it wouldn't rest until its purpose was fulfilled. The journey through space was long and tense. Alex sat in the cockpit of the small spacecraft, his hands gripping the controls as the armor hummed softly against his skin. It never fully deactivated, its presence constant and alive, like a second heartbeat. The coordinates burned brighter in his mind with each passing hour, urging him forward. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Back on Earth, the situation grew worse. Kale Vor's fleet had been spotted near the edges of human-controlled space, moving swiftly toward the research facility. Governments scrambled to respond, but everyone knew they were no match for the warlord's advanced technology and sheer ruthlessness. Dr. Hannah Lewis and her team worked tirelessly to fortify the base, knowing it wouldn't hold for long if Kale Vor arrived. "We need more time," Kevin Foster muttered one night as he helped install makeshift defenses around the perimeter. "Alex isn't ready yet. If they attack now, they'll take the armor by force," Peter Walsh finished grimly. His face was pale, exhaustion etched into every line. "And we can't let that happen." Hannah didn't say anything. She stared at the monitor showing Kale Vor's approaching ships, her jaw clenched tightly. For all their efforts, there was no denying the truth. They were outmatched. All they could do was hope Alex reached the destination in time, and that whatever awaited him would give humanity a fighting chance. Meanwhile, aboard the spacecraft, Alex felt the armor shift subtly. It wasn't just guiding him anymore, it was preparing him. The whispers in his mind grew louder, clearer. Flashes of alien weapons, battles, and destruction filled his thoughts. He realized the armor was teaching him, showing him how to fight, how to survive. But with each lesson came a growing sense of dread. The armor wasn't just a protector. It was a weapon, one capable of unimaginable devastation. When Alex finally arrived at the coordinates, he found himself staring at a massive structure floating in the void of space. It was ancient, its surface scarred and pitted from eons of exposure to cosmic radiation. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its sides, pulsing in rhythm with the armor's energy. As Alex approached, the structure began to awaken, extending tendrils of light that reached out toward him. "This is it," Alex whispered, his voice trembling. "Whatever you want me to do, I'm here." The armor responded immediately, propelling him out of the ship and into the heart of the structure. Inside, he discovered a chamber filled with glowing orbs suspended in midair. Each orb contained fragments of memories, not just from the Verith, but from countless civilizations the armor had encountered over millennia. Wars, alliances, betrayals, they all played out before his eyes in vivid detail. Then the whispers stopped. In their place came a single clear message. Asterisk, destroy them, asterisk. Alex froze. "Who?" he asked aloud, though he already knew the answer. The armor wasn't referring to Kale Vor or any other immediate threat. It was talking about something far greater, an ancient enemy that had hunted the Verith to extinction and continued to spread chaos across the galaxy. Before he could process what he'd learned, alarms blared inside his helmet. Kale Vor's ships had arrived, surrounding the structure. Explosions rocked the area as laser fire tore through the debris field outside. Alex turned back toward his ship, only to find it engulfed in flames. "You don't have a choice," the armor seemed to whisper. Its voice was firm this time, leaving no room for hesitation. Summoning every ounce of strength, Alex activated the armor's full power. Energy surged through him, lighting up the chamber as he prepared to face the invaders. He knew what the armor wanted, and what it would cost. With a deep breath, he stepped into the fray, ready to unleash its fury. As the battle raged, Alex felt his body weakening. The armor's power was immense, but it came at a price. Every movement drained him further, pulling life from his very core. Still, he pushed on, determined to protect not just himself, but the fragile hope of peace the armor represented. When the dust settled, Alex collapsed to his knees, his vision fading. The armor dimmed, its glow flickering like a dying star. Kale Vor's forces retreated, battered and broken. Humanity had been safe, for now. But Alex knew the fight wasn't over. The armor had shown him the truth, and with it came a heavy burden. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it, not as a man, but as something more. Alex lay on the cold floor of the ancient structure, his body trembling as the armor's glow dimmed to a faint shimmer. The battle was over, but victory came at a cost. His strength was gone, sapped by the armor's relentless demand for energy. Every breath felt like a struggle, and his vision blurred as darkness crept in at the edges. Yet, even in his weakened state, he could feel the armor still clinging to him, not as a burden, but as a lifeline. Dr. Hannah Lewis watched the footage from Earth, her hands gripping the edge of the control panel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The team had managed to establish a shaky connection with Alex's ship just before it was destroyed, allowing them to witness the final moments of the fight. When they saw Cal Vor's forces retreat, relief washed over them, but it was short-lived. The image of Alex collapsing under the weight of the armor haunted them all. "He's alive," Hannah whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "He has to be." Peter Walsh shook his head grimly. "Even if he is, we don't know how much longer he can survive bonded to that thing. It's killing him." Kevin Foster stared at the monitors, his face pale. "We need to bring him back. Now." But bringing Alex home wasn't going to be easy. The structure he was in was unstable, its systems failing after centuries of dormancy. Worse, Cal Vor's fleet hadn't disappeared entirely. They were regrouping, likely planning another assault. If Alex didn't leave soon, he might not leave at all. Back inside the structure, Alex forced himself to sit up, his muscles screaming in protest. The armor hummed softly, almost apologetically, as if aware of the toll it had taken. He placed a hand against the wall, steadying himself as memories flooded his mind. Fragments of the Varith, their rise and fall, and the countless lives lost because of greed and war. The armor wasn't just a weapon, it was a guardian, born out of tragedy and tasked with preventing the same mistakes from being repeated. "I understand now," Alex murmured, his voice barely audible. "You chose me because I'm human, because you think we're different. But what happens when I'm gone?" The armor didn't answer directly. Instead, it pulsed gently, projecting images into his mind. He saw glimpses of Earth, vibrant and full of life. Then he saw humanity reaching for the stars, building bridges instead of weapons. Finally, he saw himself, not as a soldier or a hero, but as a symbol. A reminder that power could be used for good if wielded wisely. Summoning the last reserves of his strength, Alex activated the armor one final time. Its energy surged around him, stabilizing the crumbling structure long enough for an escape pod to launch. As the pod hurtled away from the ancient artifact, Alex slumped forward, unconscious but alive. Hours later, the pod touched down on a remote moon near Earth's solar system. Search teams sent by Hannah and her crew found Alex just in time, pulling him from the wreckage before the pod's systems failed completely. Though battered and barely breathing, he was alive, and the armor remained with him, dormant once more. Back at the research facility, Alex was rushed to medical care. Doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize him, while Hannah and the others debated what to do next. The armor had saved humanity, but at great personal cost to Alex. They couldn't risk using it again, not without understanding its true nature. "We need to document everything," Hannah said firmly, addressing the team. "Every moment, every decision. If something happens to Alex, or to us, we can't let this knowledge disappear." Over the following weeks, Alex slowly began to recover. The armor stayed silent, refusing to activate no matter how many tests they ran. It was as if it had spent itself completely during the battle, leaving behind only a shell of its former self. Yet, Alex knew better. The whispers were faint, but they were still there, waiting. One evening, as Alex sat alone in his hospital room, Hannah visited him. She pulled up a chair beside his bed, her expression soft but serious. "You changed everything out there," she said quietly. "But you also paid a price. Do you regret it?" Alex hesitated, staring at the armor covering his hands. "No," he replied finally. I don't regret it. This thing, it's part of me now. And maybe someday, it'll help someone else. Someone stronger." Hannah nodded, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll make sure of it. Whatever comes next, you won't face it alone." As night fell, Alex drifted off to sleep, the armor resting silently against his chest. Its work was far from finished, but for now, it waited, patient and watchful, ready to awaken when the time was right. Years passed, and the world slowly returned to a fragile peace. The battle against Vor became legend, a tale of bravery, sacrifice, and the mysterious armor that had turned the tide. But for Alex Carter, life was quieter now. He lived in a small house near the edge of a forest, far from the bustling cities and the constant attention of reporters and scientists. The armor remained with him, though it rarely showed signs of activity. It sat in a secure room, silent and still, as if waiting for something or someone. Dr. Hannah Lewis visited often, bringing updates from the research team. They had spent years studying the data collected during Alex's mission, piecing together fragments of the armor's history and purpose. Yet, despite their efforts, many questions remained unanswered. What was the ancient enemy the armor had warned Alex about? Would it return one day? And why had it chosen humanity? "We're documenting everything," Hannah told Alex during one of her visits. "Every detail, every theory. If the armor ever activates again, we need to be ready." Alex nodded, leaning back in his chair. His body had healed, but he still carried the scars, both physical and emotional, of his time bonded to the artifact. He didn't mind the quiet life. In fact, he preferred it. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that the armor's story wasn't over. It had chosen him once, and it might choose someone else someday. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Alex stood outside his home, staring up at the stars. The sky was clear, dotted with countless pinpricks of light. He often found himself wondering about the civilizations out there, some peaceful, others hostile. Somewhere among them, the threat the armor had shown him might still exist, lurking in the shadows of the galaxy. "You really think it'll happen again?" a soft voice asked behind him. Alex turned to see Emily, a young girl who lived nearby. She was only 10 years old, with bright eyes and an insatiable curiosity. She adored listening to Alex's stories about the armor, even though most people dismissed them as myths or exaggerations. Tonight, she clutched a worn photograph in her hand, a picture of Alex standing in the armor, taken just after the battle. "I don't know," Alex replied honestly, kneeling down to meet her gaze. "But if it does, I hope whoever steps up will be ready." Emily frowned, looking at the photo. "Do you think he'll pick me someday?" Alex smiled gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe. You've got a good heart, Emily. That's more important than anything else." She grinned, tucking the photo into her pocket. "I'll train every day, just in case." As Emily ran off toward her house, Alex chuckled softly and returned his attention to the stars. He knew the odds of the armor choosing another human were slim, but not impossible. Humanity had proven itself capable of both great destruction and great courage. Perhaps that was why the armor had awakened in the first place, to remind them of their potential, for better or worse. Back inside, Alex entered the secure room where the armor rested. Its surface gleamed faintly in the dim light, untouched by dust or time. He approached it cautiously, running his fingers along its smooth surface. For a moment, he thought he felt a faint hum, like a distant echo. But when he paused, the room fell silent once more. "Rest while you can," Alex whispered. "The galaxy's big enough without you for now." He closed the door behind him, leaving the armor alone in the darkness. Outside, the stars twinkled brightly, their light stretching across unimaginable distances. Somewhere out there, new stories were being written. Stories of hope, resilience, and discovery. And somewhere on Earth, a young girl named Emily stared at the same stars, clutching her photograph tightly. Her eyes sparkled with determination, unaware that fate might one day call upon her to step into the legacy left behind by the man who had once worn the armor. For now, the artifact slept, patient and watchful, guarding secrets older than the stars themselves. But deep within its core, a spark remained, a promise that when the time came, it would awaken once more.